In this video, we're going to be looking at whole numbers 1.12, HCF and LCM. HCF stands for highest common factor and LCM stands for lowest common multiple. Now, as it says in the lesson here, we often use these two values to help compare numbers. So the highest common factor between numbers and the lowest common multiple between them. The highest common factor is fairly straightforward. We first factorize a set of numbers. So in this example here, they've got the factors of 24 and the factors of 54, and then we find the common ones, so the ones that are in both of these numbers. So we can see 1 and 1 in both, 2's in both, 3's in both, 6 is in both, but no 4, no 9, and so on. So the common factors here for 24 and 54 are 1, 2, 3, and 6. Now, those common numbers tell us how those common factors should say, tell us how we can break up both numbers equally. So we can break 24 and 54 both up by 1s, of course, by 2s, by 3s, and by 6s. And in that case, they'll all have equal amounts. So that's a really useful number to know. We often talk about the largest number though, so the largest common factor or the highest common factor, HCF, and in that case we just look at that list of common factors here and it would be 6. And that basically tells us that is the biggest number that we can divide both 24 and 54 by. So again, it's a good value to know. Now there's a quicker way to do that, of course. So instead of having to work out all of the factors, which can take a while, we can jump straight down to our prime factorizations. So like we've done before, we can work out 126 as prime factor in this case and 294. And of course, this is probably really useful if you've got obviously larger numbers. So before, when we did 24 and 54, didn't take long to get all the factors and just look at the list. But now we've got much larger numbers. It might take quite a bit longer to find what those factors are, but we can usually get to prime factors much more quickly. So here, if we just look at our prime factors, we end up with the prime factors listed here. So 2, 3, 3, and 7 for 126, and 2, 3, 7, and 7 for 294. And basically what we need to do is find out which factors they have in common. So if we have a look, there's a 2 in both of them. There's a 3 in both of them. Now we've got a 3 and a 7, but they don't match up, but we do have a 7 in both. So if we now multiply the ones that they have in common, so in this case 2, 3, and 7, we will get an answer of 42, which of course is the highest common factor. So again, you could break that out and look at all the factors and check this for yourself, but that's what will always work. So go down to prime factors, look for the ones that they have in common, and multiply those together to get the highest common factor. There's a little applet here you can play with that will actually help you to understand that by playing with some different sets of numbers if you like. Lowest common multiple isn't much more difficult. So again, we can start by simply doing all the multiples. So the first example here has 12 and 18. So essentially we count by 12, so 12, 24, 36, etc. to get all the multiples, and by 18s as well in this list here. And we're looking for multiples that are the same, so what is common. So 12 is not in both lists, neither is 18, 24, but then we see 36 in both of these lists, so that is a common multiple. If we keep going, we eventually see that 72 is a common multiple, and then we see that 108 is a common multiple. So we look for all the common multiples that we can see, and then we're usually looking for the lowest common. So what we mean by that is the first multiple they have in common. So in that case, the lowest common multiple, LCM, would be 36. They both have a 36. Now, a little hint if you're going to do it this way is work out the first few multiples, maybe the first 4 or 5, let's say, of one number, and then do the same amount of the second number and see if you've got a common multiple. Because you don't know if it's going to be the first, the 7th, or the 100th multiple, really, when you get started. So you do a few at a time of each number. If you don't hit a lowest common multiple, then do a few more multiples of each number. There's no point doing 20 of the first number and then finding your lowest common multiple is actually the second one. So do a few of each one at a time, and then if you don't find your lowest common multiple, do a few more until you find that common multiple. Now, knowing knowing the common multiples tells you again how you can break up these numbers. That can be really, really useful, and you'll see some examples later on where that can be used. But again, using prime factors, there's a easier or quicker way to do that, especially again if your numbers are larger. So again, the same idea here is we break down first our numbers into prime factors, okay, into our prime factors that we can see here. And then once we've got those prime factors, what we do is we look at any number. So let's take 126 for a minute, and we look at which prime factors we're missing from the other numbers. So if I look at these numbers here, there's a 2 and a 2, so that doesn't count. There's a 3 and a 3, so that doesn't count. There is another 3 and not over here, a 7, and we do have a 7 here and a 7 here. So from the prime factors of the other number, 294, because we're looking at 126, remember, the only one that doesn't match up is this 7, okay, because that 7 we don't have on this side. So if we do 126 times this 7, we will get the lowest common multiple. So 126 times 7 will give us, I'm not sure, 882 it says down here, sorry. There we go. So that would give us the lowest common multiple. And if we work the other way, we did 294. The only one from this side that is not in 294 as our prime factors is the second 3. So there's a 2 and a 2, so they don't count. There's a 3 and a 3, but we've got this other 3 that doesn't appear over here. So 294 times 3 going the other way will again give you 882. So that's a quicker way of doing lowest common multiples instead of actually writing out a big long list. Because you can see it would probably have taken us a while to get to 882 if we were, actually writing out a list. But we can actually break down these into prime factors quite quickly and then use this method to find the lowest common multiple. So here we have that little summary box again, that the highest common factor of any two numbers is the largest factor of both numbers, and it is also the product of the common prime factors between them. So that was the quick way of doing it. Get your prime factors. All the prime factors are the same between them, multiply them together, and that will give you your highest common factor. The lowest common multiple of any two numbers is the smallest multiple of both of those, and you multiply one number by any prime factors it is missing from the other. So you look at the two lists, pick one of those numbers that you're using and multiply it by all the prime factors that don't appear in its own list. So that's the two quick ways that you can do both of those.